for or swapping out cash for benefits. So typically we would think that that's going to sort of lower the sort of value of the compensation package for the worker because they'd rather have like $100 of cash than an extra $100 of benefits. That with health insurance, that's not entirely true, but certainly if we're now thinking about like healthcare cost increases, again, unless the cost of the health insurance is going up because they're actually providing you with more benefits, which typically is not the case these days, then definitely you would rather have an additional $100 of cash rather than just sort of getting a healthcare plan that costs an additional $100 but doesn't provide you any more benefits than they did 3 years ago or whatever, right? So the marginal worker could, in this case, in this scenario, basically choose to stop working altogether. That could be particularly true if the spouse has health benefits, so that if you can get insurance through your wife or your husband, then it's not as critical that you be in the labor force. At that point, at that point, it's really just about whether the wages are worth it to you. And so some workers could shift from being unemployed to being not in the labor force, and if that's true, then that's going to sort of reduce that pool of unemployed people who we're saying should be bidding down wages to the point at which they fall by the amount that the benefits costs increase. So it's not really the case that literally the compensation package, the total compensation package, will be exactly the same as what it was before. It probably will be on the margin a little bit higher, but probably not by the full amount of the benefits cost increase. So you want to think of workers as sort of bearing most of these costs, but the firm does have to bear maybe some of them. Okay, so that sort of brings up this next question, which I've already alluded to several times, which is, given that you would think that sort of cash dominates any other type of benefit that you could provide, why is health insurance tied to employment in the United States? Right? So why does Berkeley basically pay me in wages and health benefits and retirement benefits as opposed to just paying me in wages, where they sort of take the cost of those health benefits and give it to me as additional wage, and then they take the cost of the retirement benefits and give me that as the additional wage? So retirement benefits are not really subject to this class. I think there's sort of like a risk-sharing type argument that the university is sort of more willing to take risks than individuals are, and so it may make more sense for them to sort of provide like these defined benefits at retirement rather than sort of giving you a lump sum that you can invest. Although certainly most private firms, and even a lot of like public agencies now are moving more towards like a defined contribution system where they just give you a set amount of money and you can invest it as you want. But for health insurance, the question is really, okay, well, why are they giving me whatever, say $10,000 of health insurance instead of just giving me additional $10,000 of wages? And if I want health insurance, I can buy it. And if I want to sort of get a cheaper plan or a much cheaper plan, I can buy that. And if I don't want anything at all, then I cannot buy it at all. So there's sort of several reasons why it does in fact make sense, or it's why it makes sense from the employer's perspective to provide these benefits rather than just giving the employees the additional cash. So the first reason is that it turns out, for historical reasons, there's a tax subsidy benefit costs. So this actually goes back to like sort of World War II. So this was an era when healthcare costs were not sort of a substantial or like a significant portion of the economy. But firms would provide basically some health benefits along with some retirement benefits, and so there were wage controls during World War II because of the wartime. But it turned out that fringe benefits were exempt from these wage controls and were untaxed. And so because of this, there was sort of like after the war was over, there was still this kind of like just I guess sort of hysteresis or whatever. They just kind of continued with the policy that they had during the wartime, and so they continued to make fringe benefits exempt from taxation. And probably at that time, it didn't really seem like that big a deal one way or the other, just because sort of the total amount of compensation that was being paid in fringe benefits was probably like a pretty small fraction relative to what it is today. But it's sort of one of those things that at the time was kind of inconsequential, but got baked into the system, and now we have it. Now it's the case that basically healthcare benefits are always untaxed, whereas wages are taxed. So from the employee's perspective, what that means is that you would rather get say $5,000 worth of health insurance than $5,000 in wages if you were going to go buy that health insurance anyway, right? Because depending on what your marginal tax rate is, the $5,000 in wages might only result in say $3,000 or $3,500 worth of take-home pay, which is not going to cover the full cost of the $5,000 in health insurance that you want to go buy. So you'd rather have it provided to you tax-free than have to pay for it with after-tax wages. So that's one reason. Then the other reason is that employer provision of health insurance basically reduces the adverse selection that's inherent in individual plans. So the way to think about this, and again, this is something we'll talk much more about in sort of subsequent weeks, but when you go and buy health insurance on the open market, so like if you're just an individual and you want to buy health insurance, right, the insurer needs to sort of think about what risk pool they want to put you into, because that's going to have a huge impact on their expected costs. So there are some things that the insurer can observe about you, which will give them sort of a good signal as to what your expected healthcare costs are. So the first thing would be like your age. So if you're only 25 years old, you're going to be in sort of a very low risk pool. If you're say 80 years old, you would be in an incredibly high risk pool in terms of sort of the expected value of healthcare services that you might use in the next couple of years. So they can look at your age, and then they can also look at your like healthcare records. So this is one of the reasons why people are really concerned about privacy of healthcare records, because potentially the whatever's in your record could be potentially used to sort of classify you into different risk pools. And so certainly if you have like some sort of pre-existing condition, that's going to knock you into a much higher risk pool than if you've never had any history of any sort of like expensive to treat condition. So there's sort of various things that they can observe about you. And certainly, so if you happen to be somebody who has a pre-existing condition, then you would certainly rather be put into sort of like the average risk pool than into the actual risk pool that you will be placed into if you're on the individual insurance market, because that's so you sort of get lumped together with everybody else in the firm. That's going to be better for you on average in terms of the expected premium. So even if forget about the fact that the employer is paying for some health insurance, even for just the case that the employer said like everybody has to buy health insurance, we're only going to pay like 10% of it, and then everybody else has to pay 90% of it. But that's just like condition of employment. If you're a high risk person, you would prefer to be in that system, having to pay through your employer, because you're going to be in a better risk pool than if you went and bought it on the individual market. But what really ends up sort of killing you if you go into if you go into the individual market is that sort of there's a dynamic of adverse selection that happens. So basically, if you think about what happens, if you're somebody who's very healthy, then you're more likely to choose not to buy health insurance at all, right? Just to go uninsured and take your chances, because at least an expected value and expectation, so the amount of value that you'll derive out of having health insurance is less than the average premium, right? So we know that like the health insurance have to cover their costs. So on average, the premium that they charge has to be equal to the expected amount of services, the cost of the expected amount of services that the average person who buys the policy is going to use, right? So if you're healthier than the average person, then basically, in expectation, it's better for you not to buy the insurance than to buy the insurance. Now, you also probably are risk averse, so you might end up buying it if sort of the expected value of the benefits is less than the cost, just because you want to avoid ending up in a situation where, even though you're healthy, you end up getting into a car accident and you have like $100,000 of with hospital bills, and they go after your assets and you go bankrupt and so forth, right? So it's not that everybody who's sort of above average in terms of like healthiness is going to opt out of buying insurance, but certainly some of them will, and the most healthy people are the most likely to opt out of buying insurance. What happens, or what that does though, is that it basically increases the risk level, or increases the expected costs of the remaining people who do choose to buy insurance, because you're selecting out all the healthy people are all self-selecting out. So the remaining pool of people who are choosing to buy insurance are actually less healthy than average. That in turn is going to increase the costs of insuring those people, because you have a less healthy group, so they're on average likely to use more medical services. That in turn then is going to force premiums up higher, which is going to on the margin force out some more healthy people, and then of course the risk pool gets even worse and premiums rise even more, and then even more healthy people end up selecting out. And so you kind of get into what we call this like death spiral where the plan just has to keep on increasing its cost, because the pool of people that it's getting that's insuring keep getting less and less healthy. But as the costs increase, then even sort of average healthy people with average health are forced out, and eventually you sort of get to a case where even people who have sort of below average health are being forced out just because the cost of the plan is so high. So this basically what happens then is like when you want to buy insurance on the open market and you say like I want to buy health insurance, that fact alone, the fact that you want to buy health insurance is a signal to the insurer that you are somebody who has like an expectation poor health. Therefore they should charge a lot for the insurance, which kind of sucks. Right. So that's exactly exactly this adverse selection problem is precisely what the ACA mandate is trying to solve. And as long as it's pretty binding, in theory it should. So I mean, hopefully it becomes less of an issue. So it's basically not an issue in other countries, mostly because other countries all have universal coverage of one form or another. Historically, it's been a huge issue in the U.S., but again, ACA is trying to solve it, so hopefully it'll diminish. But that's sort of the second reason why it can be really attractive for employers to provide healthcare benefits rather than just giving cash to employees and asking them to buy those benefits on the open market. And then sort of a final reason is even sort of ignoring like the insurance aspect of insurance. There's also just sort of like a bargaining aspect. So if you we're thinking about a case where the employer was going to give you cash instead of insurance, and maybe like you thought you weren't going to have any really big healthcare costs or something, so you were like, well, let's take this cash and save it up, and if I have to go to the doctor or I have to go to the hospital, then I'll just use my savings from all this cash to pay for it. But as we saw with the hospital bill on Monday, the prices that get charged to the individual person who just walks off the street and pays in cash are much higher than the prices that get charged to the insurer. So even if you're sort of ignoring the insurance component of the insurance and just thinking about it as a mechanism to just pay, there's still sort of this attractive discount that you would be getting if you're going through insurance rather than just paying cash. So those are basically the reasons why health insurance in the U.S. is tied to employment. Now, if the labor market isn't competitive, then it may turn out to be the case that the firm could end up covering part of the increased costs of health benefits. So we already talked about how, on the margin, the firm might end up covering some of the costs because some people would drop out of the labor force as benefit costs increase. It's also the case, that if there are sort of departures from perfect competition, so the two most common things would be unions or, as mentioned earlier, minimum wage, then it might be the case that the firm would end up covering like a non-trivial part of the increased cost of health benefits. So if you think about a mandate of health coverage, that actually acts like an increase in the minimum wage. So what I'm talking about now is not a mandate. So we have an individual mandate where individuals have to buy health insurance or face penalties, basically face fines. But there's also like a firm level mandate that basically says the employers have to provide health insurance or they pay their own sort of penalties. So this is talking about like a mandate on the employer side where employers are required by law to provide health benefits. So that's going to basically act like sort of a minimum level of total compensation. So if you have a minimum wage plus you have a health insurance provision mandate, then benefits costs or compensation costs can never fall below whatever that minimum wage is plus the cost of providing the benefits. So in that scenario, then minimum wage employees are going to get higher total compensation because wages can't be lowered, but some of them should lose their jobs in theory. So again, sort of the two things that you learn in Econ 1 about price controls are, first of all, that minimum wages reduce employment, and second of all, that rent control leads to all sorts of bad things. The first one, there's just not really any empirical evidence of that at this stage. So there was a study by Dave Card, who's in Econ here, and Alan Kruger, that came out back in 1994, and it sort of examined what happened in New Jersey and Pennsylvania after New Jersey raised its minimum wage and Pennsylvania didn't, and they actually found like an increase in employment in fast food restaurants in New Jersey relative to fast food restaurants in Pennsylvania. The point estimate, though, was not statistically significant, so basically you wouldn't want to interpret it as saying that minimum wages increase employment at sort of unskilled jobs like fast food restaurants. Rather, you would probably interpret it as they don't cause any sort of economically significant decreases in employment. So that study sort of generated a lot of controversy when it first came out, but there have been a lot of subsequent studies using other increases in the minimum wage in other locations that have basically found the same thing. It's proven extremely difficult to find any empirical evidence that suggests that minimum wages have a negative impact on employment for low-skilled workers. Now, I mean, we are getting, at some level, of course, that would have to be true, and I don't know whether or not. So San Francisco, we just voted yesterday to increase the minimum wage to $15 by 2018, and I mean, I voted yes on it. I don't know. I think costs in the city are so high that it's still. I would guess that it's still at a low enough level that you won't see a substantial increase in unemployment among low-skilled workers. But I guess at some point it would have to be true that if you raise it high enough that would occur. We're not really in that. Most places in the U.S. probably aren't in that regime. So if you have a minimum wage, in theory, as you since there's a floor on wages and there's an increase in benefits costs, of course, if you start mandating that employers provide some sort of health insurance, then it's going to be the case that employers are bearing some of the cost. So we're almost out of time now. So I'll talk a little bit about Healthy SF, which was legislation the past few years ago in San Francisco that basically required all employers of a certain size to provide healthcare benefits for workers. And so we'll sort of think about the implications of that and how it worked out.